All right, guys, let's talk about function notation. This is an example of function notation, and you'll find as we work through it that it's really not anything you haven't been doing, but it's just notation means a certain way to write something. So the F in the beginning gives you the name of the function or the formula that we're going to be using, okay? So for whatever reason in this one, and the most common one is an F for function. So you're going to see F more often than not as the function name. The -2 is your X value, which is your input or your domain or your independent value, okay? This 4 at the end is giving you the Y value or the output or the range value, okay? And what this is telling you is it's just a way to write that the F function equals 4 when the input is -2. Okay? So this one little written mathematical statement gives you a lot of information. It tells you which formula or function we used. It tells you the input value we plugged in, and it tells you what you get when you plug in that input value, what do you get as the output, okay? You'll see this kind of setup of f of x equals y, okay? Again, just showing you, oh, that's my x value in the parentheses, and whatever I get out as my answer is telling me that y value, okay? So let me give you an example. If I use, let's say for whatever reason, I'm just making up a formula here. My f function, my formula is 3x plus 10. Okay, that's the formula we're using. This just means it's the f formula. I'm inputting an x. Well, that makes sense because my formula has an x in it. So I'm going to input a value for x, and then my output is going to come from whatever this formula turns into. So if I ask you to evaluate f of -2, I'm going to stick with kind of our example from up here at the top. That means I'm going to be finding f of -2. Okay, so here's what's happening here. Do you see how this f of x has now turned into an f of -2? So I'm replacing the x with a -2 right here in the middle. Well, if that x just got changed into a -2, this x is also going to get changed into a -2. And I want you to notice that I did put it in parentheses, just like it's in parentheses over here. That's going to come into play big time when we start working with the calculator and typing things in. So I'm just going to now work this out with order of operations. 3 times -2 is -6 plus 10. So I end up with an answer of 4. So again, the full answer tells me, hey, I used formula F, I plugged in a -2, and when I worked out the formula with that -2 actually plugged in, I got an answer, a value of 4 back, okay? That's all this is. You guys have done this in elementary school. You might have seen an example where they gave you 3x plus 10 and asked you to figure it out if x was 4. Okay, and all you did was just plug in a 4 and work this out. This is not new. It's just a new way to write that same information, okay? You may have done the little input-output machines where you had like, you know, my formula inside 3x plus 10, and I put in, I shouldn't have used 4 here. That's confusing. Maybe we plugged in a -2. This is how you saw it in elementary school. So you plug in a -2 and you figure out what that input-output machine would give you back. It's not anything new, okay? So if I ask you now to evaluate f of 5, and by the way, that's how you read this, not f times 5, but f of 5. The fact that it's an f means I'm going to use my same fx function. So my fx function or f of x right up here in the beginning, my f formula was 3x plus 10. And then this is saying, okay, I'm replacing the x with a 5 right there. Instead of f of x, I want f of 5. So this is also going to become a 5. And now I just work it out and say, okay, well, so f of 5 equals 15 plus 10 is 25. Okay? This gives you a lot of information. It tells you that I used the F formula, I plugged in a 5, and when I worked it out, I got an answer, an output of 25. Okay? So in this situation, that is just telling you the input value that you're going to plug into the formula. All right? So if I switch gears just a little bit and say evaluate G of 10, well, some people in class figured out really quick, well, you haven't told me what G is. I'm not going to use this same formula because I'm not using F of 10, I'm using G of 10. So you do need to have the information that for this, G of x equals x squared minus 3x. Okay? That's just a formula I pulled from somewhere. Okay? Probably a book example. So this is telling me that I'm going to use an input of 10. I'm plugging a 10 in where the x was. So that means every single one of these x's is now going to become a 10. Now I can either use my calculator to figure this out, or I would hope that we could do this one by hand. Let's see. 10 squared minus 3 times 10, just so we have a nice clean version of it here, would be 100 minus 30 if I do my exponent and my multiplication. So I end up with 70. Now the answer is not just 70. The output value is 70, but to truly tell the entire story, I need to tell me, I need to tell the answer person, whoever I'm telling this to, that which formula I used. So I used the G formula and I plugged in a 10, and when I used the G formula and I plugged in a 10, I got a 70 out as the output. Okay? It's still the same x and y that you did in the past. It's still plugging in a value and evaluating it to see what you got. It's just a matter of, well, what are we plugging into, which formula are we plugging into, and what are we getting out. If I ask you to evaluate, let's go G of negative 3, okay, I'm going to take that same G of x formula, which is x squared minus 3 times x. Oh, it didn't really have parentheses around it, but I am going to end up putting parentheses anyway, so that's okay. And then I'm going to plug in. So this negative 3 was in the parentheses. Now it's going to replace all the x's. And especially when you're doing things on the calculator, guys, put it in parentheses, okay? I'm telling you, it works so much better. So G of negative 3 equals negative 3 squared minus 3 times negative 3. You can put this in the calculator. I'm totally okay with that. I would like to say that you would know that this is positive 9, negative 3 times negative 3, and that you would know that a negative 3 times another negative 3 also makes positive 9. So your answer would be 18. Working out this side, I'm just using order of operations, okay? It's not anything fancy. It's not anything tricky. It's just, oh, hey, plug in negative 3 into the G formula and work it out. That's all that's happening so far. All right? The next addition to this, though, is that I can also kind of change up my problem. So let's say my two formulas, remember, were 3x plus 10, and then G of x equals x squared minus 3x. Okay? They can also ask an example of find x if, not is, if f of x equals, let me make sure I pick a good number on this, negative 2. Okay, this is a totally different situation, all right? We evaluated f of negative 2, so it's not the same as f of negative 2. In this situation, negative 2 was an input value, right? I was replacing that x, or that x actually, with a negative 2. That's not what's happening here. I'm not replacing the x with a negative 2. I'm saying I don't know what x is, but I need the formula to equal -2. Basically, what this is telling you is figure out the x value so that you have an output of -2, okay? So it's like I'm taking my formula, f of x equals 3x plus 10, and I'm saying, you know what? I want this thing, this formula that I'm working with, to equal -2, all right? So I can kind of almost ignore this f of x in the front. Really what you're actually doing is kind of replacing that with the -2, okay? But you're just saying, hey, what input would give me that correct output? Well, we've solved a bunch of these, guys. This is a two-step equation. We're looking for the x value that will make that specific answer. So I'm going to subtract 10 from both sides, just doing good old algebra work. 3x equals -2 minus 10 is -12. I'm going to divide by 3, and I get x equals -4. So this is totally okay. If you really want to be like awesome and clear, you could say, okay, so my f formula, if I use a -4 input for my x value, then I can get an output of -2. Okay, this is even better because it's actually clearly stating that input and output. Okay, so you have to pay really close attention to, are they giving you a value to plug in, an input value, or are they telling you what the whole formula has to equal in the end, the output value? Okay, I hope that that helps. If you're struggling with this, it really, you guys overthink it and make it harder than it has to be. So I hope this kind of simplifies it.